The cinematic hook. They say an alpha who shows mercy dies first. King Darius Vorn learned that truth the night he broke his own law and spared a woman meant for the blade. She should be ash by now. Instead, she breathes in the shadows of his palace, a secret so dangerous it could crack an empire in half. One slip, one whisper, and everything he built on blood and iron crumbles. This is the story of the most ruthless king who ever lived, and the one choice that made him human. Stick with me till the end, hit that like, and drop your city in the comments. You're going to need someone to talk to after this. The execution square stank of old blood and wet stone. Darius stood on the platform above the crowd, arms crossed, face carved from granite. Below him, 30,000 voices roared for death. They always did. Public executions were the Empire's favorite entertainment, a reminder that the Vorn bloodline did not forgive and did not forget. The sun hammered down on black iron posts where the condemned waited in chains, 7 of them today. Thieves, deserters, a tax collector who skimmed too much off the top. Standard fare. Darius barely glanced at them. He'd seen 1,000 throats opened on this platform. One more batch of bodies wouldn't move the needle. Then they dragged out number 8. She didn't scream, didn't beg. The guards hauled her up the steps and shoved her to her knees, and she just looked at him, straight in the eye. No flinching, no tears. Her hair was matted with dungeon filth, her face bruised purple on one side. But those eyes were clear, defiant, alive in a way that made his chest tighten. Commander Rolth stepped forward, unrolling the parchment. His voice carried over the crowd. This woman stands accused of treason. She entered the city under false papers. She was found with maps of the palace, the armory, the king's private chambers. The sentence is death. The crowd howled. Rolth looked at Darius, waiting for the nod. Darius stared down at her. She didn't look away. In 10 years of rule, no one had held his gaze this long. Not his generals, not his enemies before he killed them. Certainly not some ragged woman in chains who had maybe 2 minutes left to live. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his gut, that same instinct that kept him alive through 3 assassination attempts and a civil war. This woman wasn't a spy. Spies cracked under pressure. They pleaded. They named names. She looked like she'd spit in Death's face and ask what took him so long. "Your Majesty," Rolth said, "the crowd awaits." Darius raised his hand. The executioner lifted his axe, and Darius did the one thing a Vorn king never did. He hesitated. It was only a second, maybe 2, but Rolth saw it. The crowd didn't, too busy screaming for blood, but Rolth's eyes narrowed just a fraction. Darius forced his face back to stone and dropped his hand. The axe fell. 7 heads rolled. The crowd roared. Darius turned and walked back into the palace without watching the rest. His boots echoed on marble floors slick with decades of polish and power. He didn't look back, but he didn't give the order for the 8th execution either. The dungeons under the palace went down 5 levels. Most people didn't know about level 5. Most people didn't need to. It was where you put things you wanted to forget existed. Darius descended alone after midnight, torch in hand, the flame-throwing shadows that danced like demons on wet stone walls. The air tasted like rust and despair. Somewhere in the dark, water dripped. Steady, patient, eternal. She was in the last cell, still chained to the wall, sitting with her back against cold stone. Her head came up when his footsteps stopped outside the bars. "Come to finish it yourself?" Her voice was raw but steady. No fear in it, just curiosity. He stared at her through the iron. "If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead." She laughed. Actually laughed. A short, bitter sound that bounced off the walls. "Then what the hell am I doing here?" Darius unlocked the cell. The door screamed open on rusted hinges. He stepped inside and she tensed, chains rattling. "Tell me why you were in my city," he said. She met his eyes again. That same unblinking stare. "I already told your commander." He didn't believe me. "I'm not my commander." She studied him for a long moment. Then she shrugged, metal scraping stone. "I came looking for work. I heard the capital paid well for skilled hands, with maps of my palace. I bought those off a drunk merchant, thought they might be worth something." Darius crouched down in front of her, close enough to see the split in her lip, the fingerprint bruises on her throat. "You're lying. Prove it." He almost smiled. Almost. "You know what happens to liars in my empire?" "Let me guess." She tilted her head. "They lose their heads in front of a screaming mob." "Usually." She held his gaze. "So why didn't I?" That, Darius thought, was the question that had kept him awake for 6 hours. He stood, stepped back, pulled a key from his belt, and tossed it at her feet. "Unlock yourself." She didn't move. "Why?" "Because I want to see if you run." She picked up the key slowly, like it might bite. Her hand shook just slightly as she unlocked the shackles. They fell away with a clatter that seemed too loud in the silence. She rubbed her wrists red and raw, then stood, swayed, caught herself against the wall. Darius watched, waited. She didn't run. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. Then, "Lyra." "Lyra what?" "Just Lyra." Another lie. He could taste it, but he let it sit. "You're staying here," he said. "In this cell?" "In this palace. Somewhere no one will find you." Her eyes narrowed. "Why?" Darius turned toward the door. "Because if my council finds out I spared you, they'll use it against me. And if my enemies find out, they'll come for you to get to me." She laughed again, sharper this time. "So I'm bait." "No." He stopped at the threshold, looked back. "You're a problem I haven't figured out how to solve yet. Until I do, you stay hidden. You stay quiet. And you stay alive." He left her there in the dark, the torch flame shrinking behind him as he climbed back toward the world of light and lies and power that never slept. 3 weeks passed like a knife edge. Darius moved her to a chamber in the oldest wing of the palace, a section built before his grandfather's time, when the empire was smaller and kings still died in their sleep instead of on battlefields. No servants came here. No guards patrolled these halls. Just dust and silence and ghosts of a gentler age. He brought her food himself after midnight when the palace slept. Bread, meat, wine. She ate like someone who'd known hunger, fast and focused, no words wasted. On the 4th night, she spoke first. "You gonna tell me what you're really doing?" Darius set the tray down. "I already told you." She bit into an apple, juice running down her chin. "You spared my life because you haven't figured out why you did it. That about right?" "Close enough." She studied him over the apple. "You're the king. You can do whatever you want." He almost laughed. "You don't know much about being king. Enlighten me." Darius sat against the wall opposite her, shadows pooling between them. "Being king means every choice you make has 1,000 consequences you can't see. Every mercy is a weakness someone will exploit. Every moment of doubt is a crack someone will drive a blade through." "Sounds lonely." "It is." She took another bite. "So why'd you do it?" He didn't answer right away. Outside, wind rattled the old window frames, a hollow sound like bones in a box. "I don't know," he said finally, "and that's what bothers me." Lyra smiled, just a flicker. "First honest thing you've said." The council met every 7th day in the war room, a circular chamber with walls mapped in conquered territories and floors stained with the wine of 100 arguments. Darius sat at the head of the table, listening to his generals bicker about grain shipments and border skirmishes and tax revenues. The usual noise. Commander Ralth sat to his right, silent as always, watching everything. That was Ralth's gift. He didn't speak unless he had something worth saying, but his eyes never stopped moving, cataloging threats, calculating angles. "Your Majesty," General Corvin said, his voice cutting through the chatter, "we need to discuss the Western Territories." Darius nodded. "Speak." Corvin leaned forward, a bear of a man with scars like trophies. "Warlord Thane is gathering forces. Word is he's rallying the Highland clans, promising them land and gold if they march with him." "Thane's been promising that for 5 years," Lord Vexus muttered. "He's all mouth." "He's doubled his numbers in 6 months, Corvin shot back. "That's not mouth, that's momentum." Darius tapped the table once. Everyone shut up. "How many?" 4,000, maybe 5. Corvin's jaw tightened. "And he's moving them south, toward the capital." "Yes, Your Majesty." Silence dropped like a stone. Darius felt the weight of every eye on him, waiting for the decision that would either crush the threat or let it grow. "Send scouts," he said. I want to know where he camps, how he moves, who's feeding him. When we know enough, we move. And if he marches before then? Vexus asked. Darius smiled, cold as winter iron. Then we meet him in the field and remind the Highlands why they kneel. The generals nodded, satisfied. The meeting dissolved into logistics and supply lines. Darius stood to leave. Rolth caught his arm at the door. A word, Your Majesty. They stepped into the corridor. Rolth closed the door behind them, his expression unreadable. You've been distracted, Rolth said quietly. Darius kept his face neutral. I have a warlord planning to march on my city. I'm focused exactly where I need to be. Rolth didn't blink. You spend your nights in the old wing. Darius felt ice slide down his spine. He didn't let it show. I walk the palace. It's my palace. You've done it every night for 3 weeks. Same time, same route. Darius stepped closer, voice dropping to a blade's edge. Are you questioning me, Commander? Rolth met his eyes. I'm protecting you. If I've noticed, others will too. There's nothing to notice. Then prove it. Rolth's voice was soft, almost kind. Let me assign guards to the old wing, for your safety. No. The word came out harder than Darius intended. Rolth's eyes narrowed just a fraction. Why? Because I don't need them. They stared at each other. 2 men who'd fought side by side through blood and fire, who trusted each other with their lives. But trust had limits. Darius could see Rolth doing the math, weighing loyalty against suspicion. Finally, Rolth nodded. As you wish, Your Majesty. He walked away, boots echoing down the marble hall. Darius watched him go, heart hammering against his ribs. The secret was leaking. Impeded. That night, Darius didn't go to the old wing. He sat in his chambers, staring at maps he wasn't reading, drinking wine that tasted like ash. Rolth was right. He was being reckless, stupid. One slip and the whole thing would unravel. He should kill her, end it, bury the problem before it buried him. But he didn't move. Somewhere past midnight, he gave up pretending and walked to the old wing anyway. Lyra was awake, sitting by the window, moonlight painting her face silver. She looked up when he entered. You're late, she said. I'm not coming anymore. Her expression didn't change. Okay. He waited for more. A question. An argument. She just turned back to the window. Darius crossed the room. Did you hear me? I heard you. And nothing. She shrugged. You're the king. You do what you want. He grabbed her shoulder, spun her around. Don't do that. Do what? Act like you don't care. She pulled free, eyes flashing. What do you want from me, Darius? You saved me. You hid me. You fed me. I didn't ask for any of it. If you're done, just say you're done. I can't. Why not? Because... He stopped. The words died in his throat. Because why? Her voice was quieter now, almost gentle. Because you don't know why you saved me in the first place? He turned away. This was a mistake. Her hand caught his wrist. Not a grab, just a touch. Light. He could pull away easily. He didn't. Maybe it was, she said. But you did it anyway. That's got to mean something. It means I'm weak. No. She stepped closer. It means you're human. He looked at her then, really looked, and saw something in her eyes he hadn't seen before. Not defiance, not anger, something softer, something that scared him more than any blade. I'm a king, he said. I don't get to be human. Then you're already dead. The words hit like a fist to the chest. Darius pulled away, breathing hard. I'll come back tomorrow, he said. Okay. He left before she could say anything else. Mbok. Warlord Thane attacked at dawn on the 14th day. 5,000 men hit the eastern border like a hammer, burning villages, slaughtering garrisons, driving refugees toward the capital in waves of terror and blood. The news reached Darius while he was breaking fast with the council. Corvin slammed the report on the table. He's moving fast. 3 settlements gone. He'll be at the outer walls in a week. Then we meet him in 5 days, Darius said. Full mobilization, every able body. I want 10,000 men on that field. The generals scrambled. Orders flew. Within an hour, the palace was a hive of controlled chaos, weapons being sharpened, armor fitted, horses prepared for war. Rolf found Darius in the armory, strapping on his breastplate. "I'll lead the vanguard," Rolf said. "No." Darius buckled the last strap. "You stay here. Protect the city." "Your Majesty?" "That's an order." Rolf's jaw worked. Then quietly, "What are you protecting?" Darius met his eyes. "My empire." "Is that all?" Darius turned away. "Dismissed, Commander." Rolf left without another word, but Darius could feel the suspicion hanging in the air like smoke. He went to her one last time before he left. The old wing was dark, no torches lit. He found her in the chamber, packing the few things he'd brought her into a sack. "What are you doing?" he asked. She didn't look up. "Leaving." "You can't. Watch me." Darius crossed the room, grabbed the sack from her hands. "You leave and you're dead within a day." "Then I'm dead." She tried to take it back. He held on. They stood there, hands on the same worn fabric, breathing hard. "Why?" he demanded. "Because I won't be your dirty secret anymore." The words cut deeper than any blade. Darius let go of the sack. She stumbled back a step. "I'm going to war," he said. "When I come back, if you come back. When I come back, things will be different." "How?" "I don't know, but I'll figure it out." She stared at him. Then she laughed, bitter and broken. "You really don't get it, do you?" "Get what?" "It doesn't matter if you win this war. It doesn't matter if you kill every enemy on that field. The secret's already out. Someone knows. And when they're ready, they're going to use it to destroy you. No one knows." "Darius?" Her voice was soft now. "Your commander knows." The room tilted. Darius felt cold flood his veins. "He suspects," Darius said. "He doesn't know. Give it time." She picked up the sack again. Darius didn't stop her. "Stay," he said, "please." Lyra looked at him, and for the first time since he'd met her, he saw fear in her eyes. Not of death, of something worse. "I can't watch you die for me," she whispered. "Then don't." He pulled her close, kissed her hard, tasted salt and defiance and the future burning down around them both. She kissed him back just as hard, fingers digging into his armor, like she could hold him here through sheer will. When they broke apart, they were both shaking. "Come back alive," she said. "I will." He left without looking back, because if he did, he knew he'd never leave at all. The army marched at dawn. 10,000 men in formation, banners snapping in the wind, the earth trembling under hooves and boots. Darius rode at the front, armor gleaming, the crown he rarely wore fixed to his helm like a dare. They met Thane's forces on the plains of Ashvern, a flat killing ground where cavalry ruled and infantry died screaming. Thane had numbers, but Darius had training, discipline, and a rage that burned hotter than any war cry. The battle lasted 6 hours. It was brutal, savage. Men hacked each other apart in the mud, screaming names of gods and lovers and commanders who'd already fallen. Darius fought in the heart of it, blade red to the hilt, taking wounds that would kill lesser men and pushing through on pure fury. He found Thane in the center of the melee, the warlord laughing as he split a soldier's skull. "Darius!" Thane roared. "Finally, a real fight!" They collided like storms, steel on steel, strength against strength. Thane was bigger, younger, meaner. But Darius was a king who'd learned to kill before he learned to read. He drove his blade through Thane's throat and watched the light die in the warlord's eyes. The enemy broke, ran. Darius's men chased them down and made sure the survivors remembered what happened when you marched on the Vorn Empire. Victory tasted like blood and ash. Back. Darius rode back to the capital 3 days later, half his army dead, his body a map of cuts and bruises, but alive. The city erupted in celebration. Banners, cheers, wine flowing in the streets. He barely noticed. He went straight to the palace, ignored the council's demands for debrief, and headed for the old wing. The chamber was empty. No Lyra, no sack, no sign she'd ever been there. Panic hit him like a blade. He tore through the room, checking every corner, every shadow. Nothing. Then he saw it. A piece of parchment on the windowsill, held down by a stone. He unfolded it with shaking hands. The handwriting was rough but clear. "They know. Get out while you can." Darius read it 3 times. Then he heard footsteps behind him. He turned. Rolf stood in the doorway, sword drawn, 6 guards behind him. "Your Majesty," Rolth said softly, "we need to talk about your guest." Darius didn't reach for his weapon. That was the first mistake, and he knew it the second Rolth's eyes flicked to his empty hands. A king who hesitates is a king who bleeds, but the blade at his hip felt heavier than iron, heavier than the crown he'd left in his chambers, heavier than the lie he'd been living for weeks. "Commander," Darius said. His voice came out level. Cold. The voice that had ordered men to their deaths without flinching. "Lower your sword." Rolth didn't move. The 6 guards behind him shifted weight, hands on hilts, eyes locked on their king like he was a wolf that might bolt. "I can't do that, Your Majesty." The title landed like an insult. Darius felt the old wing closing in around them, dust motes hanging in the air like suspended judgment. This room had been his sanctuary, his secret. Now it was a tomb. "You're making a mistake," Darius said. "Am I?" Rolth stepped forward. Slow, careful, the way you approach a wounded animal that might still have teeth. Because from where I'm standing, the only mistake was made weeks ago when you spared a traitor and hid her in your own palace. She's not a traitor. Then what is she? The question hung between them. Darius didn't have an answer that wouldn't damn him. Every word he could say was a confession. Every silence was proof. "Where is she?" Darius asked instead. Rolth's jaw tightened. "Safe." Define safe. Alive. For now. Rolth lowered his sword an inch. Not much. Just enough to show he was still willing to talk instead of act. "But that depends on what you tell me in the next 5 minutes. Darius's mind raced. Lyra was alive. That meant Rolth hadn't killed her outright, which meant he wanted something. Leverage, information, ammunition against enemies Darius couldn't see yet. And here was the trap every king walked into eventually. The moment when loyalty stopped being absolute and started being conditional. When the man you trusted most looked at you and saw opportunity instead of oath. "You want to know why I spared her," Darius said. "I want to know who she is." Rolth's voice dropped. "And I want to know what hold she has over you that made you risk everything. She has no hold over me." "Then why?" Darius met his commander's eyes, held them. "Because I chose to." The words fell like stones. Rolth stared at him, something shifting behind his expression. Not anger, worse, disappointment. "You chose," Rolth repeated slowly. "You chose to endanger the Empire. You chose to lie to your council. You chose to hide a woman whose very existence could be used against you by every warlord and rival bloodline from here to the Eastern Sea." Yes. Why? And there it was. The question Darius had been asking himself every night for 3 weeks. The question he still didn't have an answer for. Because every man who sits on a throne, Darius said quietly, eventually has to decide if he's ruling for the Empire or if the Empire is ruling him. Rolth's expression didn't change. "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting." They stared at each other. A decade of battlefields between them. Blood and brotherhood and oaths sworn on iron and honor. All of it cracking like ice over deep water. The guards were tense now, waiting for the signal. One word from Rolth, and this ended in blood. Darius could take maybe 2 of them before they brought him down. He'd fought worse odds, but these were his men, soldiers who'd followed him through hell. He didn't want to kill them. "Stand down," Darius said. "All of you." Nobody moved. Rolth shook his head slowly. "I can't do that." "Why not?" "Because the council already knows." The words hit like a fist to the gut. Darius felt the ground shift under him. "How much do they know?" he asked. "Enough." Rolth's voice was almost gentle now. Almost. "They know you've been visiting the old wing. They know someone's been staying here. They don't know who yet, but they will. Lord Vexus has been pushing for a search. I've been holding him off, but I can't do it much longer." "Then don't." "What? Give them what they want." Darius straightened. "Show them the room. Show them it's empty. Tell them I walk the palace at night because I can't sleep after the war. Tell them whatever keeps them quiet." "And the woman?" "Gone." "Where?" "That's not your concern." Rolth's sword came back up, fast, the tip an inch from Darius's throat. "Everything is my concern when it threatens my king." Pesaten. Darius didn't step back. Didn't even blink. Then act like my commander instead of my warden. Trust that I know what I'm doing. Do you? The question was genuine. Raw. Darius saw the fear underneath Rolth's anger now. Not fear of enemies or war or death. Fear that the man he'd followed for 10 years had finally cracked under the weight of the crown. And maybe he had. I'm trying, Darius said. That's not good enough. It's going to have to be. They held position, breathing, waiting. The guards were statues now, caught between king and commander, unsure which oath mattered more. Finally, Rolth lowered his sword. 1 week, he said. You have 1 week to fix this. After that, I tell the council everything. Darius nodded, agreed. And if I find out she's a threat to this empire? You won't. How can you be sure? Because if she was, I'd have killed her myself. Rolth studied him for a long moment. Then he sheathed his sword and turned to the guards. Out, he ordered. All of you. They filed out without a word. Rolth paused at the door. She must be something special, he said quietly, to make you this stupid. He left before Darius could respond. Darius stood alone in the empty chamber, staring at the note still clutched in his hand. Lyra's handwriting, rough, urgent, real. They know. Get out while you can. But getting out was never an option for kings. You either held the throne or you died trying. There was no third choice. Darius crumpled the note and let it fall. Then he went to find her. The palace had 12 hidden passages built into the walls by paranoid kings who feared their own courts more than foreign armies. Darius knew everyone. He'd used them to escape assassination attempts, to spy on council meetings, to move through his own home like a ghost when the weight of being seen got too heavy. Now he used them to hunt. Lyra wouldn't have gone far. She was smart enough to know the city would kill her, but not stupid enough to think she could just walk out the front gate, which meant she was still inside, hiding. He found her in the third passage, the one that ran behind the eastern wall toward the old barracks. She was pressed against stone, breathing shallow, a stolen knife in her hand. She saw him and went still. Put it down, Darius said. She didn't move. How did you find me? Lucky guess. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. A ghost of a smile touched her mouth. Then it was gone. You should have stayed away. Probably. They're going to kill you for me. I know. Then why are you here? Darius stepped closer. She raised the knife. He kept coming until the blade touched his chest, right over his heart. Because running doesn't solve anything, he said. It just delays the reckoning. So what's your plan? Die heroically? No. He wrapped his hand around hers, lowered the knife. I'm going to find out who you really are. Her eyes flashed. I told you. You lied. He cut her off. You've been lying since the moment they dragged you up those execution steps. And I let you because I didn't want to know the truth. And now? Now I don't have a choice. She pulled her hand free, turned away. You won't like what you find. Try me. She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was different, smaller, younger. My name is Lyra Cade, she said, and I'm the last surviving heir of the Cade bloodline. Darius felt ice flood his veins. The Cade bloodline had ruled the Northern Territories before Darius's grandfather crushed them in a war that lasted 3 years and killed 100,000 people. The last Cade king had been executed in the capital square, his family hunted down and slaughtered to the last child. The empire had celebrated for a month. That was 40 years ago. You're lying, Darius said. I wish I was. The Cade line is extinct. Lyra turned back to face him. Almost. My mother survived. She was pregnant when they killed my father. She ran, hid, changed her name, raised me in places so small they didn't have names on maps. Why come back? She laughed, bitter and broken. Where else was I supposed to go? This is my home, my birthright, my... Your death sentence. Darius grabbed her shoulders. Do you understand what you are? You're not just a threat to me. You're a rallying point for every enemy I have, every warlord who wants my throne, every noble who thinks the Vorns are upstarts. They'll use you to tear this empire apart. I know. Then why didn't you run? She met his eyes. Because I'm tired of running. The words hung between them. Darius saw it now. The defiance. The way she'd held his gaze at the execution. She hadn't been unafraid of death. She'd been welcoming it. You came here to die, he said. I came here to end it, one way or another, by getting yourself executed. It seemed fitting. Darius let go of her, stepped back, ran his hands through his hair. This was worse than he'd imagined, worse than treason, worse than spies. This was history's ghost come back to haunt him. And the truly terrible part? He still didn't want to kill her. What hold does this woman have over you that you'd risk everything? Rolf's question echoed in his skull. Darius didn't know, couldn't explain it. She was everything he should hate, everything his bloodline had built itself on destroying. But when he looked at her, all he saw was someone as trapped as he was. We need to leave, he said. Tonight. What? You and me. We take horses and ride for the border. Disappear. She stared at him. You're serious? Yes. You're the king. You can't just disappear. Watch me. Darius? Her voice broke. You'd give up your empire? For me? He didn't answer. Couldn't. Because the truth was he didn't know if he could. The empire was in his blood, his bones. The throne wasn't something you walked away from. It was something that owned you until you died. But for the first time in his life, Darius wanted to try. Before he could say anything, footsteps echoed in the passage. Multiple sets. Coming fast. Lyra's eyes went wide. They found us. Darius pulled her behind him, drew his sword. The footsteps stopped. A voice called out from the darkness. Your Majesty. It was Vexus. I know you're in there. Darius's jaw clenched. Lord Vexus. You're trespassing in restricted passages. A dry laugh. I'm following a fugitive. There's no fugitive here. Then you won't mind if we search. Torchlight spilled into the passage. 6 men, all armed. Vexus at the front, his thin face twisted in something that looked like triumph. He saw Lyra, smiled. Well, Vexus said, what do we have here? Darius raised his sword. Back away. Or what? You'll kill us? You'll kill your own men to protect a traitor? She's under my protection. She's a Cade. The words fell like a bomb. The guards went rigid. Vexus's smile widened. Oh yes, Vexus continued. We know exactly who she is. Did you think you could hide her forever? Did you think no one would ask questions? How long have you known? Darius demanded. Long enough. Vexus stepped closer. Long enough to send word to the council. Long enough to gather support. Long enough to prepare for the moment when our beloved king finally showed his true colors. Which are? Weak. Vexus spat the word. You're weak, Darius. Just like your father, mercy will kill you. My father died in bed at 70. After losing half the empire to rebellions, he was too soft to crush. Darius felt rage building in his chest. Hot, familiar, dangerous. Careful, Vexus. You're talking about your king. Am I? Vexus tilted his head. Because the way I see it, a king who betrays his own bloodline, who hides the enemy in his own palace, who risks civil war for a woman. He paused. That's not a king. That's a traitor. The guards shifted, uncomfortable, unsure. And here was the moment, the choice every ruler faced eventually. You could be loved or feared, respected or obeyed. But you couldn't be all of them. Darius had always chosen fear, but looking at Lyra now, he wasn't sure anymore. Take her, Vexus ordered the guards. Kill the king if he resists. Nobody moved. That's an order, Vexus snapped. One guard stepped forward, hesitant. His eyes kept flicking between Vexus and Darius. Son, Darius said quietly, how long have you served? 5 years, Your Majesty. You fought at Ashvern? Yes, Your Majesty. Did I ever give you reason to doubt me? The guard swallowed hard. No, Your Majesty. Then trust me now. The guard stopped, looked at Vexus, looked back at Darius. Then he stepped aside. The other guards followed. Vexus's face went purple. You cowards! You're all... Darius moved. Fast. Brutal. The way he'd been trained since childhood. His sword caught Vexus across the throat, not deep enough to kill, but deep enough to silence. The Lord went down choking, hands clutching his neck. Darius stood over him. Anyone else want to call me weak? Silence. Get him to the healers, Darius said. Keep him alive. He'll face trial for treason. The guards grabbed Vexus and dragged him away. His blood left a trail on the stone floor. When they were gone, Darius turned to Lyra. She was staring at him with something like awe. That was stupid, she said. Probably. You just declared war on your own council. I declared war the moment I spared you. She shook her head. You can't protect me forever. I know. So what now? Darius sheathed his sword. Now we stop running. The council convened at dawn in emergency session. Darius walked into the war room to find 15 lords waiting, their faces ranging from fury to fear to cold calculation. Rolth stood in the corner, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Darius took his seat at the head of the table. Lyra stood behind him. He'd insisted, no more hiding. The room erupted. What is this? How dare you bring her here? She's a cage. She should be in chains. Darius let them rage. Let them scream themselves hoarse. When the noise finally died down, he spoke. Her name is Lyra Cade, he said. She is the last surviving heir of the northern bloodline, and she is under my protection. Silence. Shocked. Absolute. Lord Corvin spoke first, his voice deadly calm. Your Majesty. With respect, have you lost your mind? No. Then explain this. Darius stood. I don't have to explain anything. I'm your king. My word is law. Not when that law threatens the Empire, another lord snapped. The Cades were our enemies. We spent 3 years and 100,000 lives destroying them, and now you want to… what? Make peace? I want to end the cycle. What cycle? Blood for blood. Darius's voice rose. Every generation we slaughter our enemies. Every generation someone survives and comes back for revenge. When does it end? When they're all dead, Corvin said flatly. And who decides when that is? Darius looked around the table. How many more wars? How many more bodies? How long do we keep killing until we're satisfied? Until we're safe, someone muttered. We'll never be safe. Darius slammed his hand on the table. Safety is a lie we tell ourselves to justify atrocities. I should know. I've committed enough of them. The lords exchanged glances. Uncomfortable. Uneasy. Your Majesty, Rolth said quietly, what exactly are you proposing? Darius looked at Lyra. She met his eyes. Nodded once. He turned back to the council. I'm proposing we acknowledge what she is. Publicly. No more secrets, no more hiding. You want to legitimize her claim? Corvin's voice was ice. That's suicide. Or it's the only way to stop a civil war before it starts. You'll start one by doing this. Maybe. Darius met Corvin's glare. Or maybe we prove that this empire is strong enough to survive without slaughtering everyone who challenges it. The council exploded again, shouting, accusations, threats barely veiled as concerns. And through it all, Darius saw Rolth watching him with eyes that held a question. Are you really willing to die for this? Darius held his commander's gaze. Yes. The session broke after 3 hours with nothing resolved except the certainty that the Empire was fracturing. Half the council wanted Lyra executed immediately. The other half wanted Darius removed from power first. Nobody wanted both of them alive. Darius walked Lyra back to his chambers. Real chambers this time. No more hiding in the old wing. If he was going to do this, he was doing it publicly. The guards at his door didn't even blink when he brought her inside. That went well, Lyra said once the door closed. Could have been worse. How? They could have tried to kill us in the room. She laughed, exhausted, broken. You're insane. Probably. You know this won't work, right? You can't just proclaim me legitimate and expect the Empire to accept it. I know. Then why do it? Darius poured wine, handed her a cup. Because you were right. I'm tired of ruling for the Empire. Time the Empire ruled for itself. That doesn't make sense. It will. She sipped the wine, grimaced. This is terrible. It's 40 years old. Still terrible. They sat in silence. Outside, the city hummed with rumors already spreading like wildfire. The king's secret, the hidden Cade, the woman who shouldn't exist. By tomorrow, half the Empire would be calling for her head. By next week, warlords would be raising armies, and Darius still didn't have a plan beyond surviving the next hour. What are we doing? Lyra asked quietly. Darius looked at her. Really looked. Saw the fear underneath her defiance, the exhaustion under her strength. Surviving, he said, together. She met his eyes. That's a terrible plan. It's the only one I have. She smiled, small, sad, real. Then I guess we're both insane. Probably. The door burst open. Rolth strode in, face grim, a messenger behind him. Your Majesty, the Northern Territories just declared open rebellion. 3 warlords, 20,000 men. They're marching on the capital. Darius set down his wine. How long do we have? 2 weeks? Maybe less. Darius nodded. Assemble the council, full mobilization. We meet them in the field. Your Majesty. Rolth hesitated. They're not coming for conquest. They're coming for her. They know Acade is alive. They're rallying to her banner. Lyra went pale. I know, Darius said. But it doesn't matter. You exist. That's enough. The messenger stepped forward. There's more, Your Majesty. The warlords sent a declaration. They say they'll stand down if you execute the Cade pretender and swear loyalty to the old ways. And if I don't? They burn the empire to ash. Darius looked at Lyra, at Rolth, at the messenger. Then he smiled. Cold, sharp, dangerous. Tell them, Darius said slowly, that if they want her, they'll have to come through me first. Tell them I'll meet them on the field of honor. Tell them their king is done hiding. The messenger bowed and fled. Rolth stared at him. You just declared war on half your empire. I know, this is madness. Probably. Rolth's jaw worked. Then he nodded. I'll start preparations. He turned to leave. Commander, Darius said. Rolth stopped. Thank you for not killing me when you had the chance. Rolth looked back. Day's not over yet, Your Majesty. He left. Lyra grabbed Darius's arm. You can't do this. This is necessary. Darius pulled her close. Listen to me. We're past the point of turning back. They know who you are. They're coming whether I protect you or not. At least this way we control the battlefield. You're going to die. Maybe. He touched her face. But at least I'll die for something that matters. I'm not worth a civil war. That's not your choice to make anymore. She kissed him then. Hard, desperate. Like she could pour all her fear and anger and regret into one moment. When they broke apart, her eyes were wet. Don't die, she whispered. Do my best. Moms. The next 2 weeks moved like a nightmare. Darius mobilized every soldier, every militia, every able body in the capital. 15,000 men. Not enough. Not nearly enough against 20,000 rebels who believed they were fighting for the soul of the empire. The council was in chaos, lords changing sides daily, bribes flowing, threats whispered in dark corridors, assassination attempts that Rolth barely stopped. Through it all, Lyra stayed visible. Darius made sure of it. She walked the palace grounds, attended councils, sat at his side during strategy sessions, showing the empire that he wasn't ashamed, that she wasn't a secret anymore. It worked. Sort of. Some soldiers rallied to the king who fought for what he believed. Others deserted in the night, unwilling to die for Acade. The numbers kept shifting, never in their favor. On the 13th night, Rolth found Darius in the armory. We're going to lose, the commander said bluntly. I know. Then surrender her. No. Darius, Rolth grabbed his arm. I'm trying to save your life. I know. Darius pulled free. And I appreciate it, but the answer is still no. Why? Because the moment I give her up, I prove that mercy is weakness, that power is the only thing that matters, that the strong survive and the weak deserve to die. Darius met Rolth's eyes. I've ruled by that code my whole life, and I'm done. So you'll die for a principle, better than living as a hypocrite. Rolth stared at him. Then slowly, he smiled. Bitter, resigned. You really have lost your mind, he said. Probably. Good. Rolth clapped him on the shoulder. At least you'll die honest. He walked away. Darius stood alone in the armory, surrounded by weapons that had conquered an empire, and he wondered if any of them would be enough to save one woman. Such. The armies met on the plains of Kelvorn at dawn on the 15th day. 20,000 rebels on one side. 15,000 loyalists on the other. the grass between them already trampled flat by scouts and skirmishers. Darius rode to the front, armor polished, sword sharp, the crown fixed to his helm like a challenge. Lyra rode beside him. The rebel lords came forward to parley. 3 of them, hard men with old grudges and older scars. The center one spoke. His name was Taram. He'd fought for Darius once, before. "Your Majesty," Taram said, "you know why we're here?" "I do." "Then give us the Cade and we can avoid this bloodshed." "No." Taram's face hardened. "We outnumber you. We'll crush you." "Probably." "Then why fight?" Darius looked at Lyra, then back at Taram. "Because some things are worth dying for." Taram shook his head. "You're a fool, Darius. Maybe. But I'm an honest fool." The rebel lord raised his hand. Horns sounded. The armies charged, and Darius rode into hell with the woman he'd doomed an empire to protect. The first wave hit like a hammer to the skull, steel on steel, screaming horses, men dying before they understood they were already dead. Darius crashed into the rebel line with his vanguard, blade singing, every swing a prayer to gods he'd stopped believing in years ago. Lyra stayed close. He'd tried to make her wait behind the lines, but she'd refused. Grabbed a sword from a dead man's hand and followed him into the chaos. Stupid, brave, both. The battle swallowed them whole. War is never clean. That's the first lie they tell you when you're young and stupid and think glory matters. War is mud and blood, and your best friend's guts spilling on your boots while he begs you to tell his mother he died well. It's choosing between saving yourself and saving the man next to you. It's killing strangers who look just like your brothers because someone in a tent drew a line on a map. And sometimes it's fighting your own people because you chose mercy over strength. Darius had fought in 7 wars, won all of them. But this one felt different. This one felt like drowning. Around him, loyalists clashed with rebels, and he couldn't tell them apart anymore. Same armor, same training, same empire eating itself alive. A rebel soldier came at him screaming. Darius cut him down. Saw the man's face as he fell. Recognized him. A kid from the eastern provinces who'd served in his honor guard 3 years back. Dead now. Because Darius had chosen a woman over an empire. He pushed forward. Had to. Stopping meant dying, and dying meant Lyra died too. So he kept moving, kept killing, kept trying not to think about how many of these corpses he'd decorated for valor. The rebel center held strong. Taram fought like a demon, rallying his men, pushing the line. Darius's forces buckled, bent, started to break. This was how it ended. Outnumbered, outmaneuvered, dying for a principle no one would remember in 100 years. Then horns sounded from the north. Different horns. Not rebel, not loyalist. Everyone stopped, turned. A third army crested the hill. 5,000 riders, fresh, organized, flying banners Darius hadn't seen in a decade. His heart stopped. Highland clans, the same bastards who'd followed Thane before Darius killed him, the same warriors who should have been scattered and broken. They charged down the slope like an avalanche and slammed into the rebel flank. The battlefield erupted into complete chaos. 3 armies now, rebels spinning to face the new threat, loyalists frozen in confusion, Highlanders cutting through both sides like wolves through sheep. Darius pulled his horse back, trying to process what he was seeing. Why were the Highlanders here? They hated him. He'd butchered their warlord, scattered their clans. They should be celebrating his defeat, not... A rider broke from the Highland mass, galloped straight toward Darius, no weapon drawn, just speed and purpose. The rider pulled up hard, ripped off their helmet. It was a woman, 50 maybe, scarred, hard-eyed. She looked at Darius with something like contempt. "You're the king?" she asked. "I am. You look smaller than the stories. Who the hell are you?" "Kara, war chief of the northern clans." She glanced at the battle raging around them. "Thane was my brother." Darius's hand went to his sword. Kara saw it, smiled. "Relax. I'm not here for revenge." "Then why are you here?" She nodded toward Lyra. "For her." Lyra's eyes went wide. "What?" Kara turned her horse. "We need to talk. All of us. Before more people die for nothing." She rode back toward the Highland lines without waiting for an answer. Darius looked at Lyra. "You know her?" Lyra shook her head, but something in her eyes said otherwise. "Well, They met in a command tent erected in neutral ground while the three armies held position, eyeing each other like dogs circling a carcass. Kara sat across from Darius and Lyra. Taram stood to the side, bloody and furious. Rolth guarded the entrance, hand on his sword. "Start talking," Darius said. Kara pulled out a rolled parchment, tossed it on the table. Darius unrolled it. His blood went cold. It was a genealogy. The Cade bloodline, going back 6 generations. And at the bottom, 2 names. Lyra Cade, Kara of Clan Thane, cousins. "What is this?" Darius demanded. "The truth." Kara leaned back. Lyra's mother didn't just run after the purge. She ran north, hid with the Highland clans. My clan. We protected her, raised her daughter. Lyra was shaking. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Kara's voice was gentle now. "Your mother never told you where you came from, just that you had to hide, that you were dangerous. She told me I was a Cade. She told you half the truth." Kara looked at Darius. "The Cades and the Highland clans have been intermarrying for 200 years. Old alliances, old blood. When your grandfather slaughtered her family, you didn't just kill the northern bloodline. You threatened ours, too." Darius felt the ground shifting under him again. This wasn't just about Lyra anymore. This was about power structures that went deeper than any map. "So you're here to claim her?" he asked. "We're here to protect her." Kara's eyes hardened. "Because she's not just the last Cade. She's the heir to 6 Highland clans, 50,000 warriors, territory that stretches from the northern sea to the mountain passes." The tent went silent. Taram spoke first. His voice was ice. "You're saying she has a legitimate claim to half the empire. By blood and law." "Yes." "And you're supporting that claim?" "We are." Darius looked at Lyra. She'd gone pale, shaking her head. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear I didn't know. I believe you." Kara's voice was soft. "Your mother kept you hidden for a reason. She didn't want you to become a pawn in the games powerful people play. But now you're out. And every warlord and noble in this empire knows you exist. So you're using her," Darius said flatly, "just like everyone else." Kara met his eyes. "No, we're giving her a choice." "Which is?" Kara stood, walked to Lyra, knelt in front of her. "You can stay with your king," Kara said. "Let him protect you, fight his battles, watch his empire tear itself apart trying to keep you safe." She paused. "Or you can come with us. Claim your birthright, unite the clans and the Cade loyalists, build something new." Lyra stared at her. "And Darius?" Kara glanced at him. "He can come too. If he's willing to share power, share." Darius almost laughed. "You mean surrender? I mean, adapt." Kara stood. "The world is changing, King Darius. You can change with it or die clinging to the old ways." "This is treason," Taram snarled. "You're talking about splitting the empire. The empire is already split." Kara gestured toward the battlefield outside. "Look around. You're killing each other over one woman. How long before it's 2 women? 3? How long before every bloodline with a grudge decides to settle it with swords? So your solution is to legitimize those claims?" Darius shook his head. "That's madness." "No, it's evolution." Kara looked at each of them in turn. "The Vorn Empire was built on conquest and blood. That worked when you were expanding, but now you're just eating yourselves. You need something different, something that doesn't require slaughtering every potential rival. And you think Lyra is that something. I think she's a start." Darius stood, walked to the tent entrance, looked out at the armies waiting, bleeding, dying. This is what power looks like when it's threatened. Not strength, not glory, just scared men killing each other because they can't imagine another way. And here was Kara offering him a door he'd never considered. Not victory, not defeat, but transformation. The problem with transformation is you have to die first. The old self, the old certainties, everything you thought you were. Darius had been a king his whole life. Could he be something else? "I need to speak with Lyra," he said. "Alone." Kara nodded. "You have 1 hour. Then we need an answer." She left. Taram followed, muttering curses. Rolth remained at the entrance, silent as stone. Darius turned to Lyra. She was crying, not sobbing, just tears streaming down her face while she stared at nothing. Did you know? He asked quietly. No. Would you have told me if you did? I don't know. He sat beside her, took her hand. It was cold. What do you want to do? He asked. She laughed, bitter. I don't know. I didn't even know who I was until 5 minutes ago. Now I'm supposed to decide the fate of an empire? Welcome to being powerful. I don't want to be powerful. I just wanted to stop running. Darius squeezed her hand. Then stop. How? Choose. Him or them. The throne or the clans. The empire you know or the one Kara's promising. Lyra looked at him. What do you want me to choose? And that was the question, wasn't it? What did Darius want? He'd been asking himself that for weeks. What did he want from this woman who'd upended his entire world? Protection for her, safety, a future where she didn't have to hide. But more than that, if he was honest, he wanted her to choose him, not the king, not the throne, not the empire or the power or the legacy. Just him. But wanting that made him selfish, made him exactly the kind of ruler he'd sworn never to be, the kind who put personal desires over the good of the realm. I want you to be free, he said finally, whatever that looks like. She touched his face. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. They sat in silence. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the battlefield in red and gold. Finally, Lyra spoke. I think we should hear her out, she said. Really hear her out, not just dismiss it because it's different. Darius nodded slowly. All right, but I need you to promise me something, anything. If this goes wrong, Lyra said, if Kara's lying, or if this is a trap, or if it all falls apart, she met his eyes. Promise me you'll survive, even if I don't. Lyra, promise me, Darius. He wanted to refuse, wanted to say they'd survive together or not at all, but he saw the fear in her eyes, the same fear he felt, that they'd come too far to turn back, that the choices they'd made had consequences neither of them could control anymore. I promise, he lied. She kissed him, soft, gentle, like it might be the last time. It tasted like goodbye. Kara returned with the proposal. A new structure. The Vorn Empire would remain but would acknowledge the Highland territories and the Cade holdings as semi-autonomous regions. Lyra would rule there. Darius would rule the south. They'd share a council, share power, share the burden of an empire too big for any one bloodline to hold. It was revolutionary, insane, beautiful, and Darius didn't trust it for a second. What's the catch? He asked. Kara smiled. Smart man. The catch is you'll have rivals again. Real ones. Not vassals you can crush when they get uppity. Equals who can challenge you. That's not sharing power. That's inviting civil war. Only if you're not strong enough to handle it. Darius looked at Tarim. The rebel lord was listening, calculating. What do you think? Darius asked him. Tarim was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. I think it's the only way any of us leave this field alive. You'd accept this? A Cade ruling the north? I'd accept not watching my men die for a war no one can win. Tarim's voice was rough. We came here because you hid her, because you lied. This, he gestured at Kara's proposal. This is truth. Messy truth. But truth. And messy truth was better than pretty lies. Darius wanted to refuse. Wanted to draw his sword and dare them all to try taking his empire. Wanted to be the king his father raised him to be. Uncompromising. Absolute. But that king would die here. Today. And his empire would burn. The king who survived would be smaller, weaker, sharing power he'd bled to earn. But he'd be alive. And so would Lyra. All right, Darius said. We'll try it. Kara nodded. Good. Then let's... The tent flap burst open. A messenger stumbled in. Bloody. Gasping. Your Majesty, the capital, it's... He collapsed. Rolth caught him, lowered him to the ground. The man was dying. Gut wound. Fatal. What about the capital? Rolth demanded. The man coughed blood. Lord Vexus. He rallied the city guard. Seized control. He's declared you a traitor. Both of you. Darius felt ice flood his veins. When? 3 days ago, while you were marching. He has the palace, the treasury. The man's eyes rolled back. He's crowned himself king. He died. The tent went silent. Then Rolth spoke. His voice was dead calm. We need to go back. Now. Darius didn't move. Couldn't. His mind was reeling. Vexus had survived. The throat wound hadn't killed him, and Darius had been too focused on the external threat to watch his back. Classic mistake. The kind that got kings killed. How many men does he have? Darius asked. Kara pulled out reports. 2,000 city guard, maybe 3,000 loyalists who stayed behind. He's fortified the palace. If we siege it, we'll lose weeks we don't have. Tarim cut in. And more men. Then we negotiate, Kara said. Darius laughed, bitter, sharp. Negotiate with the man who just stole my throne? He'll execute us the moment we set foot in the city. So we leave him there, Rolth said quietly. Gather strength. Come back when... No. Darius stood. We end this now. How? Lyra asked. Darius looked at her, then at Kara, then at the map spread across the table showing a capital he no longer controlled, and he made the hardest choice of his life. We use the one thing Vexus can't defend against, he said. Which is? Kara asked. The truth. They rode for the capital with a combined force of 10,000, not to attack, to surround. And then Darius did something no Vorn king had ever done. He walked to the gates alone, Rolth had argued. Kara had called him insane. Lyra had begged him not to. But Darius was done hiding, done scheming, done playing the games that had poisoned his empire from the inside. He stopped 10 feet from the gate, looked up at the walls where archers waited with arrows nocked. I am King Darius Vorn, he called, and I'm here to speak to the usurper who stole my throne. Silence. Then Vexus appeared on the wall, throat bandaged, face pale, but alive, and smiling. Usurper? Vexus called down. I saved this city from a traitor king who chose a whore over his empire. Darius felt rage building but forced it down. That woman is Lyra Cade, last heir of the northern bloodline, and she is my partner in a new empire. There is no new empire. Vexus leaned over the wall. There's only the one your grandfather built, the one you're destroying with your weakness. Weakness. Darius let the word hang. I've fought 7 wars, killed more men than you've ever met, built this empire into the strongest force on the continent. That's not weakness. That's strength you're too scared to understand. Strength is doing what's necessary, not what feels good. And what's necessary to you? Darius asked. Killing everyone who disagrees with you? Slaughtering entire bloodlines because they might be a threat someday? How many generations does that go on before you run out of enemies and have to start inventing new ones? The crowd gathering behind the gates was listening now. Darius could feel them. This is what power looks like when it's afraid, when it's so terrified of losing control that it'll burn everything down rather than admit it was wrong. I spent my whole life ruling by fear, Darius continued. Thought it was the only way to hold an empire together. Turns out I was just passing my fear down to everyone under me, making them scared too, scared to question, scared to challenge, scared to be anything but obedient. He gestured back toward the army behind him. But these people aren't here because they're scared of me. They're here because I finally gave them something worth fighting for, a chance to be more than pawns in someone else's game. Vexus shook his head. Pretty words, but words don't hold empires. Swords do. You're right. Darius drew his blade. So let's settle this the old way. You and me. Single combat. Winner takes the throne. Vexus laughed. You think I'm stupid enough to... Unless you're scared. The crowd murmured. Vexus's face went red. I'm not scared of you. Then prove it. Darius pointed his sword at the gate. Open the gates. Face me. Or spend the rest of your short reign knowing everyone thinks you're a coward. Vexus stared down at him, calculating, weighing options. Then he smiled. All right, single combat, but when I kill you, your little revolution dies with you. Agreed. The gates opened. Vexus walked out in full armor, sword drawn, face twisted in confidence. Behind him, the city guard watched. The citizens watched. The empire watched. And Darius realized too late what Vexus had planned. Because walking out behind the Lord were 20 guards, all armed, all moving to surround Darius. Vexus laughed. Did you really think I'd fight fair? He asked. You taught me that, Your Majesty. Never give your enemy a chance to win. The guards closed in. Darius raised his sword. Knew he couldn't win, not against 20, but he'd die trying. Then arrows rained down. Not at Darius, at the guards. He looked up, saw archers on the wall firing at their own side. City guard turning on city guard. Chaos erupting behind the gates. And through the confusion, Rolth appeared. Bloodied, grinning. Told you I'd protect you, he said. You disobeyed my order. Yeah. Rolth shrugged. Court-martial me later. More loyalists poured through the gates. Fighting erupted. Vexus tried to run. Darius caught him. They fought in the street while the city tore itself apart around them. Vexus was desperate, sloppy, scared. Darius was calm. He disarmed Vexus with 3 moves, put him on his knees. The crowd went silent. Darius stood over the man who'd tried to steal his throne, could see the fear in Vexus's eyes now, the realization that this was the end. Kill me, Vexus spat. Prove you're still the monster you always were. Darius looked at him, then at the crowd watching, then at Lyra pushing through the chaos toward him, and he lowered his sword. No, he said. What? I'm done killing people to prove I'm strong. Then what? Trial, Darius said. You'll face trial for treason. The council will decide your fate. Vexus laughed. You think they'll be merciful? I don't know. Darius stepped back. But it won't be my choice. Not anymore. Guards took Vexus away. The fighting stopped. The city held its breath, and Darius turned to face his empire. Broken, bleeding, waiting. I've been your king for 10 years, he called out, and I've ruled the only way I knew how, with strength and fear and the absolute certainty that I was right. The crowd listened. But I was wrong, not about everything, but enough. Enough that good people died. Enough that the empire started eating itself. Enough that I almost destroyed everything my family built because I couldn't admit when I needed to change. He looked at Lyra. This woman saved my life. Not because she was strong or powerful or connected, but because she showed me what I'd become. And she gave me a choice. Keep being the king who ruled by fear, or become something different. What are you saying? Someone in the crowd called. Darius took a breath. I'm saying the empire needs to change, and I'm saying I can't do it alone. He held out his hand to Lyra. She took it, stepped beside him. Together, Darius said, We're going to build something new. An empire that doesn't require slaughtering everyone who challenges it. One where power is shared instead of hoarded. Where different bloodlines can coexist without constant war. It won't be easy. It won't be clean. And a lot of you will hate it, but it's the only way any of us survive what's coming. The crowd was silent, watching, judging. Then someone started clapping, then another, then more. Not everyone. Maybe not even half. But enough. Enough to start. Sit. That night, Darius stood on the palace balcony, looking out over a city that had almost burned. Lyra joined him, leaned against the railing. Think it'll work? She asked. Honestly? No idea. Inspiring. He smiled. First time anyone accused me of that. She took his hand. What happens now? Now we figure out how to actually run a shared empire without killing each other. Fun. Probably not. They stood in silence. Below, the city was quiet. Healing. Hoping. Darius thought about the man he'd been 4 weeks ago. The king who would have executed Lyra without hesitation. Who would have crushed any challenge to his authority with overwhelming force. That man was dead, and Darius didn't mourn him. I'm scared, he admitted quietly. Of what? That I'll fail. That this new empire will collapse. That I gave up everything I was for nothing. Lyra squeezed his hand. Then we fail together. He looked at her. Really? Really? He kissed her, soft, gentle. Full of hope he'd forgotten how to feel. When they broke apart, she was smiling. Besides, she said, you're not alone anymore. You have me. You have Kara. You have Rolth. You have an entire empire of people who are willing to try something different, and if they turn on us, then we fight, like we always do. Darius pulled her close, held her while the moon rose over a city that had almost destroyed itself. And for the first time in his life, He let himself believe that maybe strength wasn't about being unbreakable. Maybe it was about knowing when to bend. Behind them, footsteps approached. Rolth appeared in the doorway, face serious. "Your Majesty, we have a problem." Darius didn't let go of Lara. "What now? Messengers just arrived. From the eastern provinces. Rolth paused. "They're demanding Lyra be crowned as co-ruler, publicly, with full authority." Darius frowned. "That's what we agreed to. They want it done tomorrow. In the square. In front of the entire city." Rolth's voice dropped. "And they're threatening rebellion if you refuse?" Lyra went still. "That's not negotiation. That's a power play." "Exactly." Rolth looked at Darius. "They're testing you, seeing if you'll actually share power, or if this was all talk. And if I refuse? Civil war. Again." Darius closed his eyes. "Of course. Because nothing was ever simple. Every step forward came with a new test, a new challenge, a new chance to fail." "What do you think?" he asked Rolth. "I think you've come too far to back down now." Lyra pulled away from Darius, looked at him. "You don't have to do this. We can find another way." "What other way?" Darius asked. "We promised change. This is what change looks like. Messy, uncomfortable, forcing us to give up control." Lyra's eyes were wet. "You'll lose half your authority. I already did, when I chose you over the Empire." He touched her face. "Might as well make it official." "You're sure?" "No," but he smiled. "I'm doing it anyway." He turned to Rolth. "Tell them yes, tomorrow, in the square. Full ceremony." Rolth nodded. "And if this goes wrong? Then we deal with it, like we always do." Rolth left. Darius stood alone with Lyra on a balcony overlooking an empire that no longer belonged to him alone. And he wondered if that was freedom or just a different kind of cage. Tomorrow would tell. Dawn broke over the capital like a blade through silk. Darius hadn't slept. Couldn't. He'd spent the night pacing his chambers, armor half buckled, sword within reach, mind racing through every scenario where this coronation ended in blood. Most of them did. The thing about power is that nobody gives it up willingly. They'll promise. They'll negotiate. They'll smile and shake hands and swear oaths on everything they hold sacred. But the moment you actually ask them to let go, to share what they've bled for, they turn into cornered animals. And cornered animals bite. Lyra found him standing at the window, staring down at the square where workers were erecting the platform. 2 thrones, equal height, equal prominence, a symbol that would either unite the empire or shatter it completely. "You didn't come to bed," she said quietly. "Couldn't." She moved beside him, put her hand on his arm. "We can still back out." "No, we can't." "Why not?" "Because I gave my word." He turned to face her. "And because if we back out now, every warlord and noble in this empire will know I'm weak. They'll smell blood. Come for us harder next time." So we walk into a trap to prove we're not weak. We walk into it because it's the only way forward. Lyra studied his face. "You look terrible." "Thanks. I'm serious." "When's the last time you slept?" 3 days ago, maybe 4. "Darius, I'm fine. You're not." She grabbed his face, forced him to look at her. "You're exhausted. You're scared. And you're trying to carry this whole thing on your shoulders alone. That's what kings do." "Not anymore. Remember?" She pressed her forehead against his. "We're in this together now, which means you don't get to martyr yourself without asking me first." He almost smiled. "I'll keep that in mind." "Good." She kissed him, quick, hard. "Because I'm not letting you die today." Same. They stood there for a moment, just breathing, just being human before they had to go out and pretend to be gods. Then Rolth knocked on the door. "Your Majesty, it's time." "What?" The square was packed. 30,000 people crammed into every available space. Rooftops, windows, streets leading in, all of them watching, waiting, judging. Darius walked through the crowd with Lyra at his side. No guards. That had been his call. If he was going to ask his empire to trust him, he had to trust them first. Stupid, maybe, but necessary. The crowd was silent as they passed. Not hostile, not friendly, just watching, like they were still deciding whether to cheer or riot. Kara waited on the platform with the Highland chiefs. Tyram stood opposite with the rebel lords who'd agreed to the peace. Between them, the council sat in uncomfortable formation, still figuring out how to breathe in this new world. Darius climbed the steps. Each one felt heavier than the last. By the time he reached the top, his legs were shaking. Not from fear, from exhaustion, from weeks of war and stress and decisions that would haunt him until he died. He took his throne. Lyra took hers. The crowd held its breath. Ralph stepped forward, voice carrying across the square. Citizens of the Vorn Empire, we gather today to witness a new beginning, a covenant between old blood and new, between conquest and compromise, between the throne that was and the throne that will be. He turned to Lyra. Lyra Cade, last heir of the Northern bloodline, chosen leader of the Highland clans, do you swear to rule with wisdom and strength, to protect this empire and all who dwell within it, to share power in good faith and honest purpose? Lyra stood. Her voice was steady. I swear. Then by the authority granted to me as commander of the Vorn forces and witness to this covenant. Ralph never finished. The explosion ripped through the western edge of the square. Fire and smoke and screaming, bodies thrown like rag dolls. The crowd erupted into chaos, people stampeding in every direction, crushing each other in panic. Darius was on his feet instantly, sword drawn, scanning for threats. Another explosion. Eastern side. More screaming. This wasn't random. This was coordinated. Assassins burst from the crowd. 20 of them, maybe more, all converging on the platform, blades out, eyes locked on Lyra. Ralph and the guards formed a wall. Steel met steel. Men died fast and ugly. Darius grabbed Lyra, pulled her behind him. Stay close, he ordered. Where would I go? A third explosion. Right at the base of the platform. The structure shook. Wood splintered. Darius felt it tilting, collapsing, about to come down and crush them all. Jump! He yelled. They jumped together, hit the ground hard, rolled, came up fighting. The square was hell, fire spreading, buildings collapsing. The crowd a writhing mass of terror and confusion. Through the smoke, Darius saw them. An army, marching in from 3 directions, thousands of soldiers in unfamiliar colors. Not rebels, not loyalists. Something else. Who the hell are they? Lyra shouted over the chaos. Darius didn't know. Didn't matter. They were here to kill. He grabbed Ralph as the commander fought his way through assassins. Get Lyra out of here, Darius ordered. What about you? I'll hold them. You'll die. Probably. Darius shoved him toward Lyra. Do it anyway. Ralph hesitated, then nodded, grabbed Lyra's arm. She fought him. No, I'm not leaving you. You don't have a choice, Darius said. He kissed her one last time, tasted smoke and salt and goodbye. Now go. Ralph dragged her into the chaos. She screamed his name. He didn't look back, because looking back would break him, and he needed every piece of himself for what came next. The thing about fighting when you know you're going to die is that it simplifies everything. No strategy, no planning, no worrying about tomorrow because tomorrow doesn't exist. Just steel and blood and the satisfaction of taking as many of them with you as possible. Darius waded into the enemy like a storm, every swing a prayer, every kill a promise. He'd been trained by the best fighters in the Empire, forged in 7 wars, tempered by a decade of holding power against everyone who wanted to take it. These bastards had no idea what they'd walked into. He cut through the first wave, the second. Bodies piled around him. His arms burned, his lungs screamed, wounds opened across his shoulders, his sides, his legs. Didn't matter. He kept moving, kept killing. Behind him, Kara and the Highland warriors had rallied, fighting alongside Vorn soldiers, old enemies united against this new threat. That would have been beautiful if Darius had time to appreciate it. He didn't. A blade caught him across the ribs, deep. He felt bone crack. Stumbled, caught himself. Another assassin came in fast. Darius killed him. Barely. His vision was blurring now. Blood loss, exhaustion, both. He was dying. Knew it with the same certainty he knew his own name. But not yet. Not while Lyra still needed time to escape. So he kept fighting, kept buying seconds with his life, kept proving that some things were worth more than survival. Then he saw him. Through the smoke and chaos, standing at the edge of the square, watching. Lord Corvin, The general who'd served Darius for 8 years, who'd fought beside him, bled beside him, sworn loyalty until death. He was wearing the colors of the attacking army. Darius felt something crack inside him, not his body, his soul. You, he breathed. Corvin walked forward, slowly, no weapon drawn, just calm, certain. Me, he confirmed. Why? Corvin smiled. Sad, almost gentle. Because you were right. What? Everything you said about the empire eating itself, about power corrupting, about needing to change. Corvin stopped 10 feet away. You were absolutely right. Then why betray me? Because you weren't going to change it. Not really. Corvin's voice was soft. You were going to compromise, water it down, make it palatable to the people who benefit from keeping things broken. That's not change. That's just rearranging deck chairs on a sinking ship. So you decided to burn it all down. I decided to give it a clean slate. Corvin gestured at the chaos around them. This empire is diseased. Has been since your grandfather built it on corpses and lies. You can't heal that. You can only cut it out and start fresh. Darius laughed. Bitter. Broken. With what? More corpses? More lies? With truth. Corvin's eyes were bright. Fanatic. We're going to tear down every structure, every hierarchy, every blood-soaked throne, and we're going to build something that doesn't require slaughtering innocents to maintain. By slaughtering innocents, sometimes you have to break things to fix them. That's the same logic that built this empire in the first place. Corvin shook his head. You still don't get it. We're not trying to build another empire. We're trying to end the concept completely. And what replaces it? Freedom. Real freedom. Not the illusion you were selling. Darius wanted to argue, wanted to explain why that was naive, impossible, why humans needed structure and order and someone at the top making hard decisions. But his legs were giving out, blood pooling around his feet, the world tilting sideways. He had maybe minutes left, if that, so he spent them differently. Is she safe? He asked. Corvin nodded. Rolf got her out. They're halfway to the Northern Territories by now. Good. I'm sorry it had to be this way. No, you're not. Corvin smiled. No, I'm not. Darius raised his sword. It weighed 1,000 pounds. Tell me something. What? When you kill me. Because they both knew that's where this was heading. When you kill me, who takes over? You? Another warlord? Some council of revolutionaries who'll spend 5 years arguing before the whole thing collapses into warlordism anyway? Corvin's smile faded. We'll figure it out. That's what everyone says. Right before the bodies start piling up. Better than the slow death you were offering. Maybe. Darius took a breath. Tasted copper. Or maybe you're just another tyrant who thinks his tyranny is justified because his cause is righteous. The words hit. Darius saw it in Corvin's eyes. The flicker of doubt. But only for a second. Then it was gone. Buried under conviction so deep it looked like faith. Goodbye, Darius, Corvin said quietly. He raised his hand. Soldiers moved in from all sides, 20 of them, 30, more than Darius could fight even at full strength. And Darius was far from full strength. But he raised his sword anyway, because that's what you did when you were king. You fought, even when the fight was hopeless, even when you knew you'd lose. You fought because surrender wasn't in your vocabulary. The soldiers charged. Darius met them head on. Oops. Here's what they don't tell you about dying in battle. It's not noble, not glorious, not the clean death the songs promise. It's messy, painful, humiliating. Darius took 3 steps before a blade caught him in the shoulder. He kept moving, killed the man who'd cut him, felt another blade slice across his back. He stumbled, caught himself, killed another. His vision was red now, blood in his eyes, blood in his mouth, blood everywhere. He couldn't feel his left arm anymore, probably severed. He didn't look down to check, just kept swinging, kept moving, kept buying Lara more time. Another blade, this one through his side. He felt it punch through organs he needed to live, felt himself shutting down. He fell to his knees. The soldiers surrounded him, weapons raised. Any last words? Corvin asked. Darius looked up at him, blood bubbling on his lips. Tell her... He coughed. Tell her I kept my promise. Corvin frowned. What promise? That I'd survive. Darius smiled through blood-stained teeth, just not the way she expected. He closed his eyes. The blades came down. Oshant. Pain. That was the first thing. Overwhelming, all-consuming, pain that turned his body into a map of agony, which meant he wasn't dead. Darius opened his eyes. He was in a tent. Medical tent. The smell of blood and antiseptic. Bandages wrapped so tight he could barely breathe. Rolth sat beside him, face haggard. You're awake, the commander said, voice rough. Unfortunately, you've been out for 3 days, feels longer. Rolth poured water, helped him drink. It tasted like rust and mercy. How bad? Darius asked. Bad. Rolth's voice was flat. 32 separate wounds. You should be dead. Why aren't I? Because I came back for you. Against orders, against common sense. Rolth met his eyes. Lyra wanted to come too. I had to physically restrain her. Where is she? Safe. In the Northern Territories with Kara. Rallying support. For what? Rolth smiled. Grim. For the war. Darius tried to sit up. Failed. His body was broken in ways that would take months to heal, if they healed at all. Tell me everything, he said. Rolth did. The attack had been total, coordinated across the Empire. Corvin's revolutionaries had struck simultaneously in 7 cities, killed half the council, seized the armories, declared the Vorn Empire dissolved. They were calling it liberation. The survivors were calling it slaughter. How many dead? Darius asked. Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. We're still counting. Darius closed his eyes, felt the weight of every corpse pressing down on him. This is my fault. No. Rolth's voice was sharp. This is Corvin's fault, and the fault of every other fanatic who thinks they can murder their way to paradise. I gave them the opening by weakening the throne, by trying to change too much too fast. You tried to save the Empire. Rolth leaned forward. Don't you dare blame yourself for other people's evil. Darius wanted to believe that. Couldn't quite manage it. What's left? He asked. Of the Empire? Rolth grimaced. Not much. The capital is contested. 3 provinces have declared independence. 2 more are under Corvin's control. The rest are waiting to see who wins. And our forces? 10,000 loyal troops. Maybe. Most of them scattered. Rolth paused. Lyra has another 15,000 in the north. Highland clans plus Cade loyalists. So we're outnumbered. Badly. Darius lay back, stared at the tent ceiling, did the math in his head. They had maybe 25,000 troops. Corvin had at least 40,000, plus the momentum, plus the righteousness of his cause making recruitment easy. This was a losing fight. But then again, so was the last one, and the one before that. Darius had built a career on winning fights. He should have lost. Time to do it again. When can I ride? He asked. Rolth stared at him. You're not serious. When can I ride? The healers say 2 months, minimum. I don't have 2 months. You don't have 2 legs that work properly either. Rolth's voice rose. You can barely sit up. You want to lead an army? I want to end this before more people die. Then let someone else lead. Who? Darius met his eyes. You? Lyra? Kara? They're all capable. But none of them are the king. None of them carry the weight that I do. You're not the king anymore. Corvin made sure of that. Then I'm the idea of the king. And sometimes that's enough. Rolth was quiet for a long moment. Then he shook his head. You're insane. Probably. This is suicide. Maybe. And you're doing it anyway. Yes. Why? Because Darius pushed himself up despite his body screaming in protest. Because Lyra is out there trying to save what's left of this empire. And I'll be damned if I let her do it alone. Rolth studied him. Then slowly he smiled. All right, I'll get you a horse. And enough painkillers to knock out a bear. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You might not survive the ride. Wouldn't be the first time. Rolth left to make preparations. Darius sat alone in the tent, breathing through pain that felt like fire in his veins. His body was broken. His empire was shattered. His enemies were winning, but he was alive, and as long as he was alive, he could fight. Achag. It took 2 weeks to reach the northern territories. 2 weeks of riding through burned villages and scattered refugees. 2 weeks of seeing what Corvin's revolution looked like on the ground. Bodies hanging from trees, nobles executed in their homes, anyone who'd supported the old regime put against walls and shot. This was the freedom Corvin promised, written in blood, and it was spreading. By the time Darius reached Kara's stronghold, half the empire was either under revolutionary control or too terrified to resist. Lyra met him at the gates. She looked different, harder. She'd been fighting for 2 weeks while he recovered. It showed in her eyes. "You should be in bed," she said. "Probably. You look like death. Feel worse." She kissed him anyway. Hard enough to hurt. He didn't complain. When they broke apart, she was crying. "I thought you were dead," she whispered. "So did I." She hit his chest. Not hard. Just enough to make a point. "Don't do that again." "I'll try." She pulled him inside. The war room was packed. Kara and her chiefs, Tarim and the rebel lords, Rolf and what was left of the royal guard. All of them gathered around maps showing an empire in flames. Darius took his place at the head of the table. Every movement hurt. He didn't let it show. "Report," he said. Tarim spoke first. "Corvin controls the eastern provinces. He's fortified the capital. We can't break through without massive casualties. Then we don't break through, we go around." "To where?" Darius pointed at the map. "The western ports. If we control the coast, we control trade. We starve them out." "That'll take months," Kara said. "Maybe years." "We don't have months," someone else argued. "Corvin is executing loyalists daily. The longer we wait, the fewer people we have to save. And the longer we wait, the stronger his position becomes," Rolf added. "He's recruiting, building infrastructure. In 6 months, he'll have consolidated power completely." Darius listened to them argue, watched the map, calculated odds. They were right. All of them. Waiting was death. Attacking was death. Every option led to the same place, so they needed a different option. "What if we don't fight him?" Darius said quietly. The room went silent. "What?" Lyra asked. Darius straightened, ignored the pain screaming through his body. "What if instead of trying to defeat Corvin militarily, we defeat his narrative? Explain." "Corvin's power comes from one thing, the belief that the old empire was irredeemable, that it had to be torn down completely." Darius looked around the table. "What if we prove him wrong?" "How?" "By showing the empire we've already changed, that the reforms we promised aren't just talk, that shared power works." Tarim frowned. "We tried that. It ended in explosions and mass murder, because we were still clinging to the throne, still trying to maintain control." Darius took a breath. "What if we let go completely?" "You've lost your mind," Kara said flatly. "Maybe. But hear me out. We publicly dissolved the Vorn monarchy, announced that the empire is now a federation of autonomous regions, give every province the choice to join or leave." "That's insane," someone said. "Half of them will leave. Let them." Darius met their eyes. "The ones that stay will stay because they want to. Not because they're forced. That's real power. Not the illusion we've been peddling. And if Corvin attacks anyway, then he proves he's not a revolutionary. He's just another tyrant who can't tolerate anyone who doesn't submit to his vision." Darius leaned forward. "Right now, he's winning the moral argument. We change that by actually becoming what we claim to be." The room erupted in argument, half supporting, half convinced he'd gone mad. Lyra silenced them with a gesture. "It could work," she said slowly, "if we do it right. If we make it genuine instead of tactical. That's a big if. Everything is a big if right now." She looked at Darius. "You understand what you're proposing? You're giving up the throne, for real this time. No takebacks." "I know. You'll just be a man. No title, no authority, no protection." Darius smiled. "Sounds perfect." She studied him, then nodded. "All right, let's do it." The room exploded again, more arguments, more objections. But beneath the chaos, Darius felt something shift. Hope. Fragile. Desperate. But real. They spent the next 3 days crafting the announcement, every word debated, every implication considered. Finally, they were ready. Darius stood before a hastily assembled crowd. Loyal supporters, skeptical observers, enemy spies definitely lurking in the back. He didn't have prepared remarks. Didn't need them. He just told the truth. "For 10 years I've been your king," he began. "And for 10 years I've ruled the only way I knew how, with strength and certainty and the absolute belief that I knew what was best." The crowd listened, but I was wrong. Not about everything, but enough. Enough that good people died. Enough that the empire started destroying itself. Enough that I almost lost everything that mattered trying to hold on to power I never deserved in the first place. He paused. "So I'm ending it. Effective immediately, I am dissolving the Vorn monarchy. There will be no more king, no more throne, no more bloodline claiming the right to rule by birth." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Instead, we're offering a choice. Every province, every territory, every city and village. You can join a new federation built on consent instead of conquest. Or you can leave. Build your own future. We won't stop you." The silence was absolute. "I know this sounds insane. I know it feels like surrender. Maybe it is." Darius met their eyes. "But I'd rather surrender power than watch more people die fighting over who gets to wield it." He stepped back. The crowd erupted, cheering, jeering, arguing, all of it at once. Lyra took his hand. "Think it'll work?" she asked. "Honestly? No idea. First honest thing you've said all week." He smiled. "I'm learning." They walked off the platform together, into a future neither of them could predict. And for the first time in weeks, Darius felt something like peace. Eeked. Corvin's response came 3 days later. A message delivered by a single rider. Bloody. Exhausted. Darius read it aloud to the council. "Your surrender changes nothing. The old empire dies regardless. Join us or burn with it." Short, brutal, clear. Rolth slammed his fist on the table. "He's not even going to negotiate." "Why would he?" Kara said. "We just gave up our only leverage." "No." Lyra shook her head. "We gave up the leverage they expected. But we gained something else." "Which is?" "Moral authority." She looked at Darius. "Half the provinces just declared they're joining the Federation. Not because they're forced, because they chose it. And the other half? Still deciding. But they're watching, waiting to see if we're serious." "Corvin won't give them time to decide," Taram said. "He'll move now, before we can consolidate." "Then we need to move first," Ralph said. "Hit him where he's weak." "He's not weak anywhere," Kara countered. "He controls the capital, the armories. He doesn't control the people." Darius stood. "That's his weakness. His whole revolution depends on popular support, on the belief that he's liberating them from tyranny. So we break that belief." "How?" Darius smiled. "We give them a better option." The plan was simple, suicidal, but simple. Darius would ride to the capital, alone, unarmed, and challenge Corvin to a public debate. Winner takes the empire. Everyone told him it was insane, that Corvin would just kill him, that it was a waste of everything they'd built. Darius went anyway, because sometimes the only way to win is to bet everything on one roll. He reached the capital at dawn, rode through streets filled with revolutionary banners, past checkpoints where Corvin's soldiers watched him with suspicious eyes. He made it to the square where he'd almost died 3 weeks earlier. Corvin was waiting, standing on a platform, surrounded by guards, looking surprised. "You actually came," Corvin said. "I gave my word. I could kill you right now." "You could." Darius stopped his horse. "But then you'd prove everything I said about you, that you're just another tyrant who can't tolerate dissent." Corvin's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" "A conversation. In front of the city. Let them decide who's right, and if I refuse, then you prove you're afraid of words." The crowd that had gathered murmured. Corvin heard it. He smiled. "All right, let's talk." They stood on the platform together. The king who'd given up his throne, the revolutionary who wanted to burn the world. And they argued. For 3 hours they debated. Philosophy, power, justice, the price of change, and the cost of stability. The crowd grew. Thousands, tens of thousands, all listening. And slowly Darius felt the momentum shift. Because Corvin was smart, articulate, right about a lot of things. But he was also angry, rigid, unwilling to compromise. And the crowd saw it. They saw a man so convinced of his righteousness that he couldn't imagine being wrong. While Darius admitted his mistakes, owned his failures, spoke like a human instead of a prophet. By the time the sun set, the crowd had made their choice. Not everyone, maybe not even most, but enough to matter. Corvin saw it happening, saw his support eroding in real time, and he did what desperate men always do. He reached for a weapon. The crowd screamed. Guards moved in. Darius didn't run, just stood there, watching Corvin. "Do it," he said quietly. "Prove me right." Corvin's hand shook, the blade halfway drawn. He saw the trap, saw that killing Darius now would destroy everything he'd built, but he also saw that letting him live meant watching his revolution crumble. Checkmate. Corvin's face twisted, rage and despair and betrayal all at once. Then he lunged. The blade came fast. Darius didn't move. The crowd surged forward. Guards rushed in. And in the chaos, the Empire held its breath, waiting to see if words were stronger than steel. The blade never reached Darius. Ralph appeared from nowhere, body slamming into Corvin mid-lunge, both men crashing to the platform in a tangle of limbs and steel. The crowd erupted. Guards surged forward from both sides. Chaos swallowed the square whole. But Darius stayed still. Just stood there with his arms spread, unarmed, watching the empire he'd built tear itself apart one last time over the question of whether violence solved anything. It never did. That was the lesson empires refused to learn. You could conquer with the sword, rule with the sword, die by the sword, but you couldn't build anything lasting because fear only holds until someone braver comes along. And there was always someone braver. Rolth had Corvin pinned now, blade at the revolutionary's throat. One move, and it was over. The crowd held its breath, waiting for the killing stroke, the justice they'd been promised. Darius stepped forward. "Let him up," he said. Rolth's head snapped around. "What?" "Let him up. Your Majesty, he tried to kill you." "I know." Darius met Rolth's eyes. "Let him up anyway." For a long moment, Rolth didn't move, just stared at Darius like he'd finally, completely lost his mind. Maybe he had. But Rolth obeyed, stood, stepped back, kept his blade ready. Corvin rose slowly, blood on his lip, rage in his eyes, defeat written across every line of his body. "Why?" Corvin demanded. "Why spare me?" "Because killing you makes you a martyr." Darius kept his voice level. "And I'm done creating martyrs. So what? You just let me go?" "No." Darius looked at the crowd. Thousands of faces watching, judging. "You face trial, like Vexus, like anyone else who's committed treason." Corvin laughed. Bitter. Broken. "Treason against what?" "You dissolved the monarchy. There's no king to commit treason against. Then you face trial for murder, for the thousands who died in your revolution, for the villages you burned, for the innocents you executed because they wouldn't join your cause." The crowd murmured. Agreement, anger, satisfaction. Corvin saw it, saw his support crumbling, saw the revolution dying in front of him. "You think this changes anything?" His voice rose. "You think one act of mercy undoes generations of oppression? You're still the same empire, still built on blood and conquest and—" "You're right," Darius said. Corvin stopped mid-rant. "What?" "You're right. This empire is built on blood. My grandfather's blood. My father's blood. Mine." Darius stepped closer. "And you know what? That blood doesn't wash off. Doesn't matter how many reforms we pass or how many thrones we dissolve. The foundation is still rotten. Then what's the point? The point is we try anyway. The point is we acknowledge the rot instead of pretending it doesn't exist. The point is we give the next generation something better to build on, even if we can't fix it ourselves. That's not enough. It never is." Darius's voice was quiet now. "But it's all we've got." Corvin stared at him. And for just a moment, Darius saw past the revolutionary, saw the man underneath, young, idealistic, terrified that the world would never change. Darius knew that fear, had lived with it his whole life. "Take him," Darius said to the guards. "Keep him safe until trial." They moved forward. Corvin didn't resist, just let them bind his hands and lead him away. The crowd watched in silence. Then someone started clapping, slow, deliberate. Others joined. Not everyone, not even most, but enough. Enough to matter. Darius turned to face them. Every muscle screaming, every wound throbbing. He was running on fumes and willpower and the desperate hope that this actually meant something. "This empire is done," he called out. "The old empire. The one built on forcing people to obey. That dies today." He paused. "What comes next is up to you. Every province, every territory, every person. You get to choose. Join the Federation or don't. Stay or leave. Build or destroy. It's your choice now." "And what about you?" someone in the crowd yelled. "Me?" Darius smiled, tired, genuine. "I'm going to find a quiet piece of land somewhere and learn how to grow something that doesn't involve corpses." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Uncertain, hopeful. "But if you need me," he added, "if this whole thing falls apart and you decide you want the old tyrant back, I'll be around." More laughter, warmer this time. Darius stepped off the platform, walked through the crowd. They parted for him. Some reached out to touch his shoulder, his arm, like he was already becoming a myth instead of a man. He found Lyra waiting at the edge of the square. She'd been there the whole time, watching, ready to die beside him if it came to that. It almost had. "You're insane," she said. "So you keep telling me. I mean it." She grabbed his face. "You just let him live. After everything. Yeah. Why?" "Because," Darius said slowly, "if I killed everyone who tried to kill me, I'd have run out of empire decades ago." She kissed him. Hard. Desperate. Like she was trying to prove to herself he was real. When they broke apart, she was crying. "Don't ever do that again," she whispered. "Can't promise that." "Try." "All right." He wiped her tears. "I'll try." They walked through the city together, past the burned buildings, past the memorials already springing up for the dead, past the future trying to be born in the wreckage of the past. And Darius felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Fragile. Uncertain. Probably doomed, but real. The trial lasted 3 weeks. They held it in the square where Corvin had tried to kill Darius. Public, transparent, everyone invited to watch. The charges were simple: murder, arson, treason against humanity if not against the throne. Corvin didn't deny any of it, just sat there while witness after witness described the horror his revolution had unleashed. The families torn apart, the villages destroyed, the innocents caught in the crossfire. He listened to all of it without emotion, like he'd already made peace with whatever came next. On the final day, they let him speak. He stood before a crowd that wanted him dead and spoke for 2 hours. About injustice, about the rot at the heart of empire, about how sometimes you had to break things so completely that they couldn't be put back together wrong. It was passionate, articulate, compelling. It didn't matter. The jury found him guilty on all counts. The sentence was death. Darius sat in the crowd and watched it unfold. Felt nothing, no satisfaction, no vindication, just exhaustion. They asked him if he wanted to carry out the execution personally. Old tradition. The king delivers justice with his own hand. He refused. Let someone else carry that weight. He'd carried enough. They executed Corvin at dawn 3 days later, clean, quick, as merciful as death ever was. Darius didn't attend. Instead, he stood on the palace balcony with Lyra, watching the sun rise over a city that was trying to figure out how to breathe without fear. "Do you think it'll work?" Lyra asked. "The Federation?" "Honestly, I don't know." Darius leaned against the railing. "Half the provinces are still deciding. The other half are watching to see if we survive the first crisis. And if we don't, then we tried. That's more than most empires can say." She was quiet for a moment, then, "What do you want to do now?" Darius looked at her. Really looked. Saw the woman who'd upended his entire world, who'd forced him to question everything he thought he knew about power and strength and what it meant to rule. "I want to disappear," he said. "Take you somewhere quiet, somewhere no one knows who we are or what we've done. Just live. That sounds perfect. It probably won't last. Nothing ever does. He kissed her, slow, gentle, full of all the things he'd never been good at saying out loud. When they broke apart, Rolf was standing in the doorway. Apologies for interrupting, the commander said, but we have a situation. Of course we do. Darius sighed. What now? The Western provinces. They formed a coalition. They're demanding representation in the Federation Council. That's good, Lyra said. That's what we wanted. They're also demanding you step down from any leadership role. Rolf's voice was flat, permanently. Darius waited for the anger, the indignation, the reflex to fight back. It didn't come. All right, he said. Rolf blinked. All right? They're right. I'm a symbol of the old empire. If they can't trust me, the whole thing falls apart. Darius straightened. Tell them I'll step down, publicly. Today, if they want. Your Majesty. I'm not Your Majesty anymore, just Darius. And Darius is tired of fighting battles he can't win. Rolf studied him. Then slowly, he smiled. You've changed. Had to. The old version died on that platform. Good riddance. Agreed. Rolf left to deliver the message. Lyra took Darius's hand. You sure about this? She asked. No, but he squeezed her fingers. I'm doing it anyway. That seems to be your approach to everything. Worked so far. Barely. He laughed. Real laughter. The kind he'd forgotten how to make. Come on, he said. Let's go tell the council I'm quitting before they fire me. They walked through the palace one last time, past the throne room where Darius had ruled for a decade, past the war room where he'd planned campaigns that killed thousands, past the chambers where he'd made the decision to spare one woman and upend an empire. It all felt smaller now, less significant. Turns out thrones were just chairs, empires just lines on maps, power just the collective agreement to let one person make decisions until everyone got tired of it. And Darius was very tired. The council met in emergency session. 15 representatives from territories still deciding whether to join the Federation. They looked nervous, unsure whether this was negotiation or trap. Darius put them at ease immediately. I'm stepping down, he announced. No conditions, no requirements. Effective today. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Lord Tarim spoke first. Why? Because you can't build a new system on old foundations. Darius looked around the table. I'm the old foundation. Everything I represent. Everything I've done. It's baggage you don't need. And what will you do? Live. Quietly. Somewhere far from here. The Western Coalition representative leaned forward. You're just giving up power? No fight? I've been fighting my whole life. Darius met her eyes. I'm done. She studied him, suspicious. Then slowly she nodded. All right. We accept. Just like that, Darius was no longer a king, not even a leader, just a man. It felt like freedom. Trot. They left the capital a week later. No ceremony, no fanfare, just 2 horses and whatever they could carry. Rolf came to see them off. You're really doing this, he said. Really doing this. Where will you go? North. Maybe west. Somewhere with good soil and bad memories. Rolf smiled. Sounds perfect. They clasped hands, brothers who'd fought through hell and somehow survived. Take care of them, Darius said. The Federation. Make sure it doesn't fall apart the moment I'm gone. I'll do my best. Rolf paused. And Darius? Yeah? Thank you for showing me there was another way. Thank me when it works. It's already working. You just can't see it yet. Darius wanted to believe that. Almost did. They rode out at dawn, through gates that had seen empires rise and fall, through streets where people were already rebuilding, past the square where he'd almost died and chosen to live instead. Lyra rode beside him, silent, thoughtful. After an hour, she spoke. Do you regret it? Any of it? Darius thought about that, about the wars, the deaths, the choices that haunted his sleep. Some of it, he said. Most of it. But not you. She smiled. Good answer. It's true. They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the city shrinking behind them, the future opening up ahead. Where are we going? Lyra asked eventually. I don't know. Darius looked at her. Does it matter? Not really. Then let's just ride until we find somewhere that feels right. That could take forever. We've got time. They rode north through territories transforming, some thriving, some struggling, all of them trying to figure out what came after empire. It wasn't pretty, wasn't clean, but it was real, and real was enough. They stopped in a small village 3 weeks later, mountain valley, good water, soil that looked like it might grow something other than regret. The locals didn't recognize them, didn't care about their past, just offered work and a place to sleep and the chance to be anonymous. Darius took it. They built a small house on the edge of the village, nothing fancy, just walls and a roof and a bed big enough for two. Lyra learned to cook. Darius learned to farm. Neither of them were good at it, but they tried. Months passed, seasons changed, news from the capital filtered in through travelers and merchants. The Federation was holding, barely, arguments and compromises and messy democracy replacing the clean brutality of monarchy. It was chaos, but it was their chaos. Chosen, earned. One evening, Darius sat on the porch watching sunset paint the mountains gold. Lyra sat beside him, reading reports from Rolth about council meetings and policy debates and all the boring work of governance. "Listen to this," she said. "The eastern provinces want to establish a common currency. The western provinces are threatening to walk if they do." Darius smiled. "Sounds familiar. Should we go back? Help mediate?" "No." Darius took her hand. "Let them figure it out. That's the whole point. What if they can't? Then they'll learn from failing. Same as we did." She set down the reports, leaned against him. "Do you miss it?" she asked. "The power?" Darius thought about that. Really thought. "Sometimes," he admitted. "When I hear about problems I think I could solve, or threats I think I could stop, the reflex is still there. But I remember what that power cost, what it turned me into. And I don't miss that version of myself at all." She kissed his cheek. "I'm proud of you." "For what?" "For choosing to be human instead of a king." They sat in silence as stars began appearing overhead. In the distance, the village was settling in for night, smoke rising from chimneys, children called in from play, life happening the way it always had, with or without empires to shape it. This was the thing about power that nobody told you when you were young and hungry for it. It wasn't the acquisition that changed you. It was the letting go. Holding power taught you to see people as pieces on a board, resources to deploy, problems to solve, threats to eliminate. Releasing it taught you to see them as human again. Complicated. Contradictory. Worthy of respect even when they disagreed with you. Darius had spent 10 years learning the first lesson. It had taken 3 months to start learning the second. He wasn't there yet. Probably never would be. The instincts ran too deep. The scars went too far down. But he was trying, and trying was enough. A rider appeared on the road as the last light faded, moving fast, urgent. Darius tensed, old reflexes. Lyra felt it, squeezed his hand. "It's probably nothing," she said. "Probably." The rider pulled up at their gate. Young, exhausted, bleeding from a wound on his shoulder. Darius recognized him, one of Rolth's men. The rider dismounted, stumbled, caught himself. "Lord Darius," he gasped. "Commander Rolth sent me. The capital is under attack." Darius felt ice flood his veins. By who? Warlords from the southern territories? They're calling it liberation, saying the Federation is weak, saying the Empire needs a strong hand again. How many? 20,000. Maybe more. And our forces? Scattered, the Federation army hasn't fully formed yet. They need time. Rolth is trying to hold them off, but... The rider's voice broke. "He needs you." Darius stood, every instinct screaming at him to grab his sword, mount a horse, ride back into the war he thought he'd left behind. Lyra stood beside him. "You don't have to go," she said quietly. "I know, this isn't your fight anymore. I know that too. But you're going anyway." Darius looked at her, saw the fear in her eyes, the same fear he felt, that once he went back he'd never leave again, that the throne would reclaim him, that power would dig its claws back in and never let go. It was a real fear, justified. But so was the need to protect what they'd built. "I'm going," he said, "but not as a king, as a soldier. I'll help Rolth hold the city long enough for the Federation to mobilize. Then I'm coming back. Promise?" He pulled her close. "I promise." She kissed him, hard, desperate, like she was trying to memorize the taste in case it was the last time. When they broke apart, she was crying. "Come back to me," she whispered. "Always." He grabbed his sword, the one he'd sworn never to draw again. It felt heavier than he remembered. The rider led him a fresh horse. Darius mounted, looked back at the house they'd built, the life they'd started. Then he rode toward war one more time. He reached the capital 3 days later. The city was besieged, fires burning, walls crumbling. The southern warlords had brought everything they had, betting that the Federation was too weak to resist. They were almost right. Darius found Rolth in the command center. The commander looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 months. "You came," Rolth said, relief flooding his voice. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "Hoped. Didn't assume. What's the situation?" "Bad. They hit us from 3 sides. We've held them so far, but we're running out of men, out of supplies, out of time. Reinforcements? Coming. But they won't arrive for another week. We need to hold until then. Can we?" Rolth met his eyes. "Not without you." Darius nodded. "Then let's get to work." They spent the next 6 days in hell, fighting street by street, building by building, holding ground they couldn't afford to lose with soldiers who shouldn't have been able to hold it. But they did, because Darius fought beside them, not as a king, as a soldier, bleeding, exhausted, human, and somehow that mattered more than any crown ever had. On the 7th day, the reinforcements arrived. Federation forces from 6 provinces, not as many as the enemy, but enough. They hit the southern warlords from behind, crushed them between 2 forces, broke their siege. The battle turned into a rout. By sunset, it was over. The warlords were dead or fleeing. The city was saved. The Federation had held. Darius stood on the walls looking out at a battlefield littered with corpses and broken dreams. Another war. Another victory. Another reminder that peace was always temporary. But this time felt different. This time, he'd fought not to conquer, but to protect. Not to expand his power, but to defend someone else's choice. That distinction mattered. Rolth found him as the sun dipped below the horizon. "The council wants to thank you, publicly, maybe offer you a position." "No." "No?" "I'm done, Rolth, for real this time." Darius turned to face him. "You've got this. The Federation's got this. You don't need me anymore. We'll always need you. Then you'll know where to find me." But Darius smiled, tired, genuine. "I'm going home." Rolth clasped his shoulder. "Go. You've earned it. So have you. Not yet, but maybe someday." Darius left the capital that night, didn't wait for ceremony or speeches, just took a horse and rode into darkness toward a small village and a woman who'd promised to wait. She was standing on the porch when he arrived at dawn. He dismounted, walked toward her. Every step heavy with exhaustion and relief and the bone-deep certainty that this was where he belonged. She met him halfway, threw her arms around him, held on like she'd never let go. "You came back," she whispered. "Told you I would." "How bad was it?" "Bad. But we won. And now? Now I'm done." He pulled back to look at her. Really done. No more wars, no more empire. Just this. Just us. She searched his face. "You mean it?" "I mean it." She kissed him, soft, gentle, full of belief he didn't deserve but would spend the rest of his life trying to earn. They walked back to the house together as the sun rose over mountains that had seen empires rise and fall and didn't care about either. Inside, Darius removed his sword, hung it on the wall, a reminder of what he'd been, what he'd chosen to stop being. Lyra watched him. "Think you'll ever pick it up again?" she asked. Darius looked at the blade, saw his reflection in the steel, scarred, tired, still breathing. "I hope not," he said. "But if I do, it'll be to protect something worth protecting, not to conquer. That's all anyone can ask." They spent the rest of the day working the land, planting seeds that might grow into something other than war, building a life that had nothing to do with thrones or crowns or the weight of empire. It was hard work, honest work. It felt like redemption. Years passed. The Federation stumbled and fought and nearly collapsed a dozen times, but it held, evolved, became something new and messy and real. News reached Darius occasionally, treaties signed, provinces joined, others left, the constant flux of democracy replacing the static brutality of monarchy. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever was, but it was theirs. Darius and Lyra grew old together in their small house on the edge of nowhere. They never had children, never built an empire, never did anything history would remember. They just lived. And living, it turned out, was enough. On a morning 20 years after he'd walked away from the throne, Darius woke to find Lyra already up, standing on the porch, watching the sunrise. He joined her, moving slower now, body carrying decades of old wounds and older scars. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said. "It is." She took his hand. Weathered, calloused, real. "Do you regret any of it?" she asked. "The choice to walk away?" Darius thought about that. About everything he'd given up, everything he'd lost, everything he'd gained in return. "Not even a little," he said. She leaned against him. "Good." They stood in silence as the sun climbed higher, painting the world in gold and promise and the simple truth that power was never the point. Love was the point. Connection was the point. Choosing to be human even when being human was hard. That was the lesson Darius had spent a lifetime learning. And in the end, it was the only one that mattered. Below them, the village was waking up. People starting their days, living their lives, building futures that had nothing to do with kings or empires or the man who'd once ruled them all. Darius watched them with something like peace. He'd been a king, a conqueror, a tyrant who'd learned too late that strength without wisdom was just violence with better marketing. But he'd also been something else, a man who'd chosen to change, to let go, to become someone worth being instead of someone worth fearing. That was the real victory, not the battles won, not the empire saved, but the choice to be better than the world expected. And as the sun rose over a world still learning how to be free, Darius Vorn stood with the woman who'd saved him and knew that some secrets were worth fighting for. Some risks were worth taking, and some empires were worth letting die so something better could be born. He squeezed Lyra's hand. She squeezed back. And together they watched the dawn break over a future they'd bled to create, but would never rule. It was more than enough. It was everything.